The record button has been clicked. Mitch, thank you so much for joining me, man. I'm sort of debating whether or not I'm going to call it like the Studio Raphael community podcast or just like the Studio Raphael podcast. I feel like the community podcast sort of brings people into it a little more in the sense like it's us as a community. But nonetheless, man, thank you so much for joining me. How's it going?
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm good. It's good to be here. My vote is for just because of the way Raphael sounds.
Yeah.
It feels weird to put a very wholesome and like warm word next to it because Raphael's such a serious sounding thing.
Really? You think so?
I think it is, yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
when you consider what that name comes from, yeah, in my perspective. So just for sheer sound,
From
right?
you, for just you say where the name comes from. I'm actually curious where it comes from in your perspective because we are going to be talking about faith and music, so might as well sort of start there, Raphael. Because to me, it's a very faith-driven word. So
It is, yeah. It's
yeah,
the name of an angel.
yeah. It's
It's the
actually
name of one of God's archangels.
it's my Hebrew name as well, which is what inspired the whole
That
concept.
too.
Yeah, cool. Glad we're on the same page there. So yeah, man, I'm
Yes.
definitely interested today, just like having a conversation about you and I. We can go on forever about faith and music and all these things, but
Oh, yeah.
biblical things.
If
Yeah,
we're not careful, this can turn into a theology class. So
yeah, no, I won't let it. I'm gonna keep us on track. I will keep us on track as best as possible here.
bird reigns supreme.
the, I still don't know what kind of bird it is, but I love it.
It's Animorphs, dude.
Those are great
I
books.
am
Speaking of which,
transfigured.
okay, no, stay on track.
Okay.
Stay on track.
All right.
Okay, from your perspective, or for you, Mitch, you are a bass player. You are would you call yourself a rapper or a hip hop artist or just a lyricist? What would you call yourself?
A vocalist,
A
I would call
vocalist.
myself.
Cool.
Yeah.
Got it. So,
Yeah.
from in your path, in your journey, how would you say your faith has played a role in your journey as a vocalist?
Well, my faith is pretty young still, so it's played a major role in the fact that as I grow deeper in my faith, my narrative and my perspective around the way I make music transforms rapidly. And I have to come to terms with the way I've been acting a lot and sort of begin to craft a new me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's been troublesome because I'm very attached to the person that the image that I created for myself as an artist. I became very attached to, and so I've actually been struggling musically with my identity because
Mm.
it's changing so rapidly right now, and I have a hard time with how much it's changed because I was really comfortable with that image that I was projecting of being like a rap metal, aggressive, musical warrior type of person.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm too aware of what being in that aggressive state of mind does to me and does to the people around me. So I'm actually in quite a state of transfiguration right now where that being still wants to exist. I just don't know how or
Mm-hmm.
don't know why or in what way.
Yeah,
And
that's no. Go ahead.
and I need to sort of, I don't know, it would be healthy for me to get lost in feelings of goodness and feelings of joy and harmony and like stuff like that, right? I've never really come into that side of myself or come in touch with that side of myself. So
No, sounds like you're on your way there. That's cool, man.
thanks, buddy.
From like a vocal perspective, I guess like a big theme or idea for me, and you sort of expressed it there a little bit as well, is like how in the expression of ourselves through music, through art and writing, there is this sort of need to, I guess, constantly like look at who we are in our expression. Like, I guess what I'm trying to lean towards is like the transformational side of writing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how has your writing helped you see yourself more? How has it helped you really reflect on who you are and like what phase are you at in all this? I think I'll be able to define this more as we go, but I'm interested in the sort of transformational side of your songwriting. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Cool.
I mean, wordplay is just so cool, man.
Yeah.
When a hip hop artist has a really strong grasp of wordplay, it really makes the music very enchanting because now it speaks in different layers. Like I was starting a track the other day and the first line was let's vibrate. He got the knowledge that'll make your pupils dilate. And that's such a great line because not only does it talk about stimulate like, excitement and being like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which I think is something that the Christian realm currently does not project very well, because when you go to church, like, ain't gonna lie, bro. Usually, if you go to an old Catholic worship, it's not the
Now what?
Motown, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
it's not where your black tight dress is on, right? You got old ladies in there with their hats on, and so I think there's this big misrepresentation behind who the Most High is
Mm-hmm.
in the world. But I said, let's vibrate. He got the knowledge that'll make your pupils dilate. So that not only talks about, if you look at the definition of the word dilate, it means to grow, wide, to expand,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that line says, not only are you like feeling an immense feeling of good from learning this knowledge, but you're growing in power too. Like, you're expanding your horizons rapidly, which is,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
I just want to dive into that a little more. That's cool. Like, would you
absolutely.
say that in your writing and in your vocal process, it's almost like you are connecting to something greater than yourself? Does it feel like that when you're going through the process of it?
It does, and it's scary. And there's a lot of spiritual resistance that I go through too because of that. That keeps me, that works overtime to keep me distracted,
Yeah.
right? That works overtime to keep me away from the pen and the pad, right?
Right.
Because that's where my gifting is truly, really, really powerful. I feel like is when I come up with an idea and I put some words over a beat.
Right. Yeah. Something that like I I've had these like sort of I guess in the same light spiritual experiences in music, but sometimes I don't really understand like how to put that into a grounded sort of term. Like somebody will say writing music can be a very spiritual experience, but what does that
Mm-hmm.
mean? What does that mean to you? I'm curious if maybe in your experience you have a way of putting it. Music is a spiritual experience.
I guess as a vocalist, especially since you're usually in a lead, like a main character kind of role,
Mm-hmm.
one grounding narrative I've always had around creating lyrics and songs is that if I am, you know, in a song, writing words and doing the voiceover for it, essentially, I'm the character and the music is the world, right? And so
Music is
it's
the
as simple
world.
as that, really.
What do you mean by the music is the world?
It's your setting, it's your atmosphere, your environment that you're in, right? If you start blaring trumpets in a hip hop beat, right, and maybe a little keys, some major keys in the background, it's probably going to feel like you're walking up and down the street, right? Or it's going to feel like you're in a club at nighttime. So I can use a linguistic aesthetic, or I could actually pull from my memory bank, right? But usually it's a mixture of both. A lot of people like to write for themselves and from their own experience. So,
I feel like I'm paint me a picture here. Paint me a picture of what you're creating and how it feels and how it looks and what the lyrics represent and sort of in this image. I feel like I've lost it a little myself,
mhm.
but maybe you can sort of when you're writing, when you're creating, like what does that feel like? What does that look like to you when you're talking about trumpets and other instruments here?
Hmm. I guess what comes to mind initially would be like keeping my hand on my pocket as I walk around, looking over my shoulder, right? Just trying to make sure I'm on point, but still cool and calm, right?
So it's like
The feeling of my feet grinding against the concrete as I move towards my destination, right? Smoke in the air, homeless people. I've spent a lot of time on Hastings, so I'd probably write about like walking through Hastings and looking around at the lost souls and stuff like that.
right.
And
Okay.
then going to Funky's for some karaoke or something like that.
Okay, I think I'm catching your drift now in the sense of like so maybe just if I can put it into another terms like when you're writing what you're doing is I guess finding ways to musically present the life that you're experiencing. Is that sort of what you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about? Is like when you're surrounded by these things like East Hastings and the sort of world that you're presenting, it's like how can you take those and bring those into a musical context where you're sort of creating the musical life or the musical sound of the life that you're experiencing. Am I getting that right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. Making it imaginative in the sense that an author will not necessarily need to be somewhere to write about it,
Right.
right, but also pulling from my own experience so I can bring that conviction, which we've talked about in the past, behind what I'm saying and speak it with real meaning, because that's really important in
Got
the
it.
realm of vocals. I find, especially hip hop, which is so personality and so reality based,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So what brought you to hip hop then, out of curiosity?
The artist XXX Tentacion, I really enjoyed his innovative styles.
Interesting.
Um,
That's like
yeah,
that's still pretty recent as well. That's not like a lot of people would maybe see like Tupac or Biggie or these guys who are, you know, sort of the old school legends, but XXX Tentacion like literally was less than a decade ago, I think.
well, because my home realm for music for the longest time was the alternative and heavy metal realm, right? And
Interesting.
so I knew I could rap when I was 16 years old, but this is when ASAP Rocky, Kendrick Lamar, Schoolboy Q, all these guys were at their peak,
Yeah.
right? And so I just didn't really fit in with that narrative, I felt like. And so I didn't feel, and I had so many self-esteem issues too, and you know what I mean? And I was so slow slam poetry and
Mm-hmm.
it's a tough culture to get into, especially when you're not a part of its common narrative,
Right.
right? And you don't have other people, because I was hanging out with people who were, they like to play gangster, right? Or maybe even some of them are more gangster than I give them credit. And so it was tough to get involved with it, because not only did I not really authentically live by that dialogue or agree with it, I was also surrounded by it and watching the damage that was happening too. So when
Mm.
I heard XXX's music and I saw that there was an alternative and heavy metal kind of flair and an internal darkness to the music instead of an external darkness, I was like, okay, now I can finally start being a part of, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because now I have other people who relate, right?
Right.
And there were guys who were more alternative at the time too. It's just they were more. It was like Tech Nine, as far as I knew, or maybe the Insane Clown Posse or
Right.
Eminem,
Okay.
guys like that. And so it all still felt kind of distant, right?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting that like just to sort of take on that spin of XXX Tentacion being like sort of taking a more metal internal darkness sort of approach. I like that word play that you
Yeah.
use there, internal darkness. Um, it's interesting, I guess, counteracting that with your modern outlook now or your current outlook with faith, and I think sort of internal lightness almost. Um, how would you say for you, sort of taking these, maybe like reinterpreting these old concepts of like, because okay, when I look at or when I think of things like heavy metal and hip hop, I think of, you know, I think of a lot of
Mm-hmm.
darkness. I think of a lot of anger. I think of a lot of
Oh
hatred. I
yeah.
think of a lot of just general debauchery and etc. But now with the sort of faith angle that you're approaching music with, like how do you think, or do you think that you have a goal or a outlook of bringing light to this sort of realm of metal hip hop, and do you kind of have a vision around that? I'm just curious.
I do, and it's a constant wrestling match because I know what the Bible says, right? And I know what the Bible thinks about this now. And so it's like it doesn't fully agree with where I'm going, but at the same time, I see a lot of purpose behind it. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
constant wrestling match for myself too. Um,
Can we explore that wrestling match a little bit? Like, what is that? What's going on there?
it's literally, I think it's just the consequence I pay for being somebody who's not done anything with their lives. Is there's this angst from youth that still exists within me that needs
Mm-hmm.
to come out. And so I think whether or not it's biblical or not, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to let some of this raw passion out on the mic at some point,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just a matter of when, the orchestrator, the creator whom I'm under the guise of, whom I'm under awareness of, wants to release that and how he wants to fashion that too, right?
Yeah.
Because I have a feeling that he accepts it and that he wants to use it too. It's yeah, because there's sort of, there is a big burden behind knowing as much as I know about, um because I've seen heaven, right? And so when you've been granted access into a spiritual experience like that, there's a certain weight and responsibility that comes with it that essentially is a feeling of internal darkness, because I know I should be telling people about heaven. I know I should be saying every day that heaven is real to people and pushing them. And yeah, that's just the way it is. Like we could say yes and no and maybe so, but um there's a weight that comes with it that's hard to explain.
Yeah. I mean, just something you said there. You said that you should be telling people about heaven and pushing them for it. I just from my experience of life in general, like every time somebody's tried to push me to something, I generally tend to resist. I just want to, I guess, present an alternative angle of that. Like, wouldn't you think it would maybe be better instead of pushing people to it, instead to just show them, just live in heaven and be like, hey, look, you can join me if you want, but it's up to you. Like, if we are, it is a lot of life is sort of this idea of duality. And I guess why I'm also looking at your experience of heavy metal hip hop is because that's tend to be shrouded in darkness.
Yeah.
But there is a way. Nothing is inherently evil. Nothing is inherently dark. It's just what we've brought to it as the people. We have a choice in all things. So I think there's a lot of really interesting room for creating, so to speak, light hip hop, heavy metal. And I think there's a beauty to passion. I think there's a beauty to that power and that strength that you have and that you bring to a space. Like, I've seen you step up and, in a sense, hop on the mic and perform, and like the strength and the grounded presence that you have. And it's like, how can you utilize that? I think
Yeah.
it's powerful and it's incredible. And, I'm working on taking more of that. And I learned that from you as well. So, thank you for bringing that forward. Yeah, it's just like
Thank you.
how, I guess I'm curious. It's like, how can we help you embody more of like bringing that light presence? Because pushing people to stuff, it never works. Everybody's trying to tell
Yeah.
people you're wrong, I'm right. It's like, well, what would happen if we just all embodied that beautiful heavenly presence, and then people were like, how can I just be more like that? And then instead of trying to force them or push them, we can just guide them back to themselves. It's like, how can we embody that in our music and in our art? How can you embody that in your music and your art?
I think
Question for you.
yeah, pushing definitely is not ideal. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not what is asked of me from a biblical perspective either. Love is patient, love is kind. It
Mm-hmm.
does not envy, it does not boast, it does not insist on its own way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, I think in time,
Yeah.
I think I really just need to stay close to my work. And it's a struggle because there's a lot of distractions nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And yeah, and that's why embodying that heavenly feeling would be great, but also there's this whole story that's been written in the past. And so oftentimes when I think about creating, I'm so scattered because I want to go into the past and create these, bring people into these experiences that I had in the past. And it feels like almost where I need to start with crafting this story, which is escaping that fallen state and coming into this state of heaven, which I think could bring a
Mm-hmm.
more full experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because then people would get to experience moving from the dark into light, which is what a lot of people, if they were to follow my path, would be doing, because that's what I did,
Mm-hmm.
right? They'd be going through it in their own way, but it would still be the same thing essentially,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I think that's such like a, I mean, it's a beautifully expressed theme that I think is something that's so prevalent in the modern world. Like, I'm definitely going
Yeah,
through that as well. Like, I definitely was
totally.
shrouded in darkness for a lot of my life, and then I started to find light. And it's just, how can I continue to envelop myself in more light, and then in that
Yeah.
be a leader in the light, so to speak, and help people escape their own darkness. And I think what you shared there was a really beautiful picture of art and creation, and how we can create something that can so vividly represent who we were and where we're going. Like that
Hmm.
I can just imagine something really beautiful being made of a hip hop metal album that starts all about being in darkness and ends up in the light. And yeah, I want to support that because I think that's really cool. That's just where I'm getting at with that.
I crafted a whole vision, and I think I just need to live out this vision and just say, I'm only human, and the
Mm-hmm.
story, the narrative was who I used to be. It's not who I am today. And so I should use it so I can meet people where they're at and show them that I was there too, and
Mm-hmm.
then bring them on this journey into what I'm creating now,
Yeah.
right? And
So
cast a net. So I'm glad you're on board. It's nice to see. That's very affirming for me. So I'm
yeah,
glad I'm sharing this with you today because it's nice to discuss things with another artist.
totally. Thank you for
Um,
sharing. It means a lot.
yeah. I'm so excited to have the car on the road because then I can sustainably come out to events during the week again.
Yeah. We're always looking forward to having people at our songwriter circles, you included. This is a little, I guess, shout out for the Studio Raphael stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
Got our songwriter circles. I'm hoping to work on some other things. I don't want to talk too much about it right now because I feel like sometimes when we talk about things, we give the power away of the thing. But yeah, man,
Right.
congrats on the car on that note.
Huge.
Yeah,
Huge.
that's cool, man.
My grandpa mobile, dude. I got an old Buick.
That was
So
great.
good.
uh,
So, because I knew I didn't want a Civic. You know what I mean? I was like, I don't want a Civic or a Corolla. Like, it's just, it's too easy. I'm always that guy. There's a perfectly good solution right there, and I'm like, it's too simple. I need some details. You
yeah,
know,
I get it.
I need some intricacy. So,
Nice.
yeah.
All right, bring it back to music for a little bit.
Back to music. Yes.
Well, where do you feel like you're at right now in your musical journey? What's going on? Tell me.
I
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm excited to answer this question. I literally just need to pick up my bass guitar and go walk around and play my bass guitar. It's as simple as that right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And just really just enjoy living life as a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and building a strong momentum with just playing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just simple before I take on the lessons, before I, we're talking about how I have a hard time simplifying things, right? And it's like sometimes the solution is very simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Put the guitar in your hand, go for a walk, let your mind, body, and soul guide you. You don't need a million YouTube lessons or, right? Not for
Mm-hmm.
me, anyways. It's always been a very instinctual process for me. I'm
Yeah.
very blessed to have that because some people have had to work night and day and night
Mm-hmm.
and there are certain rewards that come with that. We talk about how Dan creates music all the time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Dan being another member of the community.
correct.
Um. Yeah. I mean, I really appreciate that insight and that outlook because I guess like a core belief of mine as well is based on the idea that as kids we're free to play, we're free to express, and we aren't thinking about the chords, we aren't thinking about the notes, we're just doing what sounds nice and what feels fun. And then
Yeah.
as we get older, we become cultured, so to speak, by the world, and then we start being influenced by other people's, I guess, talents and the feeling of, oh, maybe I'm not enough, so I need to learn more, I need to be more. And instead of being able to step into that intuitive space of creation and creativity, there's just like this sort of, there's layers of mental blockages that are just like, oh, I can't play unless I know this, and I can't be creative unless I have this. And it's just like, do you have a practice to clear yourself out? It sounds like you do in the walking and the playing, but yeah, what's your practice to get yourself into a mode of just like playing and having fun rather than getting stuck in your head?
I love attention. So for me, it's just walking around with my bass guitar.
Yeah.
It is the season. Oh yeah.
Why the
You know,
attention?
I'm just petty, it's the side of me I haven't ironed out yet.
No. Why is that petty?
Maybe not petty, it's just weird.
Weird.
It's not you don't see a man walking around. But you know what? Maybe in a world where it's more common to see a drug addict keeled over in the street than it is to see a man singing one of his favorite songs in the street, maybe it's not so bad to be weird.
Yeah. I think it would
Maybe
be
it's
more
not so bad to
inspiring. Hmm?
What's that?
I just said I think it would be more inspiring to see somebody
Yeah.
walking around with their guitar than somebody walking around with a pipe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what God was saying to me too. He's like, honestly, bro, he's like, you should, yeah, someone might think you're weird, but then someday somebody might understand you too, right? If somebody thinks you're weird, it's because they're immature, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not because you're actually weird. It's because this world is hurt.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really nice moment,
That is
you
a
know.
really nice moment.
But yeah, it's really quite larval because the past year has been it's been a lot of faith building. And so it's interesting because when I'm out having conversations with people and they want to learn stuff about the Bible, I'm able to reiterate a lot of information, a lot of the basics. I have the foundation, but I haven't been able to read or pray very much at all lately. And I think what I'm realizing now is that it's because God would like me to just be creating this art that he's given me, right?
Mm.
So that I can, do stuff with it and help and serve with it, because it's a great way to serve, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
great way to share, and it's a
Yeah.
great way to bring people together, whether they're Christian or not.
Oh yeah.
And that's a problem that a lot of Christians have, is getting people who don't have the same belief as us to want to spend time with us without making them feel like they're in this whole other world.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's where I think hip hop and heavy metal comes in, because they're just mediums that people are comfortable being around, right? Whereas if I
Mm-hmm.
go in with a straight up charismatic worship song, it doesn't sound like, and it's not supposed to. That's what
Mm-hmm.
makes it godly, is the fact that it contrasts the world. But it's hard to get people who are of the world involved. So I'm feeling a
Yeah.
lot of serendipity during this conversation, which is nice.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, it's you just brought up a lot of really interesting points there. So I'm trying to hook into one of them at the moment.
Can we talk about you?
You want to talk about me?
Let's talk about you for a bit.
Okay.
Let's
What's
talk
up?
about you.
What do you want to talk about?
How you answer some of these questions. What are some things you like to do for your practice or for your
Mm.
daily playtime? Or
All right.
do you play daily, or how's that been for you lately?
Yeah. I remember what I was trying to hook into, and I guess it leads into that a little bit.
Perfect.
Yeah. The concept of how like worship and prayer and all these things play into me, it's like in those experiences and in those moments, like when I'm bringing people together in a songwriter circle, that is an act of faith for me. When I am playing a show and leaving people feeling excited and invigorated, that's an act of worship for me. Because I think there's something to be said about doing things in God's name, doing things for love. And when I'm in that state of trying to express a higher aspect of myself through music, through art, and through bringing people together, when I'm able to leave people feeling closer and more connected, like that feeling in and of itself invigorates me and excites me. So these days, like I'm honestly having a really hard time just like sitting down and playing guitar. I feel like I did that for a really long time, and I'm struggling to find musical inspiration these days. But yesterday I emceed my, like, not my first show, but I emceed a really fun show where it was for kids at my old, I guess not high school, they're just graduating the junior school, but I incorporated elements of my experience into the school into the show, and made it a really unique experience for them that had them invigorated and excited in a way that some casual person wouldn't necessarily be able to understand, like doing trivia questions about the school, incorporating the school wings, so that way it felt like more of a unique competition for them.
Right.
For me, really like creating those environments where I'm bringing people in and speaking people's language and creating something in which I can feel closer to them and they can feel closer to me, inspiring people through that sort of a way. I just feel really good after that. So that to me is like, it's a musical experience, and it's a transcendent experience, because music to me surpasses, it is a vibratory, so to speak, experience. When you can be in the flow of life, if we are vibrations, if we are beings of light, so to speak, if we are, if everything is energy and we are energetic beings, and if you are able to step into a flow within a space and be in that room totally and just be a vessel for the expression of whatever's happening in that room, then that is just like, you're just surrendering yourself to the space. And
absolutely,
that's just like a beautiful act of faith for me. So for me, music, so to speak, playing a guitar and playing music, like, it comes and goes, but living a musical life and just being in the flow of all things, like that's sort of what I'm just focused on at the moment, is how can I just be in the flow of whatever's meant for me and just be a part of it and surrender to it and experience it. And yeah, like this month to me is very much about, I haven't made it on my page yet or made a post on the Instagram yet, but this month to me is really about surrender and just like letting go and not trying to control, and just, don't get me wrong, there's things I'd love to see. I'd love to have an actual physical studio space. I would love to be in a stronger, more solidified frame where I can support the community that I'm creating here and be a better leader for the people in my life and for myself, of course, being a self-led leader. Um,
Self-led
but
leader. That's nice. That's good.
yeah, but it's like, how can I can't force things to happen. I can't force people to change. I can't force the universe to do things for me, but I can continue to show up in my greatest capacity to all areas of my life. And I spent a lot of time trying to force the universe and forcing music, forcing God to
Yeah.
give me things, and it just didn't work. And then when I started to say, you know what? Fine, I'm just going to work on myself and I'm going to be better and I'm going to show up in the most heavenly state that I can. And hopefully other people will see that, be able to see that, and will be able to want to be a part of that with me. But I can't
Yeah.
force anyone to just be the change. That was like, I adopted that attitude like 3 years ago. And that's really what's helped me find a lot more of myself. So, yeah. Back to the original question of what am I doing to really play music right now? I think just, yeah, letting go and just being in the flow of life.
Yeah.
Like that feeling is so relaxing for me, so to speak.
Well, and this is where understanding the power and the beauty of God is so important because it allows us to live that life where we're not so much focused on what we're not doing, where we're simply focused on just surrendering and being a part of that flow of life. Like it was really interesting before we had our talk tonight. I had completely forgot that we planned on doing the Zoom call today. I was off in the park playing my bass guitar, and I just felt this strong inkling to come home and play video games.
Mm-hmm.
And I should be not playing video games because it's bad. It's a waste of time and it pollutes me, right? But if I had not listened to that inkling to play video games, we wouldn't be here having the Zoom call right now, or you would have had to call me when the time had come. I didn't have my cell phone on me, so we might have missed today, right? So there's something happening, and the more we can trust in this flow, and you lose sight of it, it's really easy. That's just the ebbs and flows of the excitement of it all. If
Mm-hmm.
we just knew it was here all the time, we were fully strong in that, we wouldn't be human, right? We'd be God, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because only God's that consistent,
Yep.
right? Only God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so there's, yeah, that's beautiful that you're moving into that state of essentially like energetic fatherhood where you're looking more to use your resources to create provision and to
Mm-hmm.
just take a stand back and watch the magic unfold itself, right?
Yep.
Instead of trying to force your own, and that's a maturity that comes with that because we all want to be the hero deep down, right? And you'll have those moments too. That's the beauty of it is you don't have to be deprived of that feeling of playing guitar and being center stage for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
right? But yeah, we need more. We need deeper than that
Yeah.
sometimes. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Thanks for that, the feedback and the encouragement there as well. It's nice as well. Um,
I
I
was
don't know.
so excited for this talk. It was
Yeah.
weird to me that I kept forgetting about it. I was like, what? I haven't seen Aiden in so long, right? Like,
Yeah.
and we always just bounce back and forth when we talk. It's never striving for me to
No.
keep edifying or continuing.
It's I always enjoy conversations with, I mean, generally speaking, everyone, but I think there's something to be said about a faith-based approach to conversation that, when I do better having conversations with people who are willing to and desiring to look at aspects of themselves that they know they need to work on. Because I think like once you've done enough work on yourself, you will become a natural mirror for what people are scared of and what they're insecure about.
Right.
Because I mean, and that's the goal as well. You want to be
Crazy.
that. What?
That's crazy. I've never thought about that before.
Yeah, it's like
That's
if you
nuts.
are fully owning yourself and somebody who's so insecure steps in front of you and looks at you, their so to speak ego or pride is gonna do everything it can to defend itself, because it's just they are intimidated of what that means to their sense of identity, and they're gonna
Absolutely.
protect it. And then basically it's like having that walk in with Jesus where it's like you see a man who just knows himself so well to the point that as soon as you see him, you're given two options. You can either walk that path or you can walk the other way. But
Yeah.
you make your choice in that moment, and
Yeah.
and you've set your destiny at least for a good amount of time. So
Absolutely.
so yeah,
Absolutely.
that's the
I
path.
mean, he was, if we're obeying the biblical narrative in this conversation right now,
Mm-hmm.
he is God, right? And yeah, that's exactly what happened when he came to this earth, is he was killed because he so embodies what you're talking about. Somebody who knows himself and is essentially perfect, right? To the point where people who are living in a state of disagreement or disagree so fiercely and are so threatened by him that he must die,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
So it happens to us on a more minor scale. And if you walk the road of, say you were to become like a saint or somebody who is just completely single-mindedly surrendered to the Most High, you'll probably get killed too for fighting. I mean, we've seen it happen to,
Do you mean that to me, man?
yeah,
Don't say that.
specifically,
No,
yeah.
we're fighting the good fight here. We're just being honest to ourselves. We're just being loving, kind people. You know.
Tell this to the bird, Aiden.
What?
Tell this to the bird.
The bird knows the way. The
Sorry,
bird.
theology,
Yeah.
music, transforming,
Yeah.
transmoding.
No. That's why we're doing here is we're just creating. It's also, I think, we live in a very different time. We live in a time where there's much more space for conversation. There's much more space for, I think, a general understanding. I think 2,000 years ago, there was a much more single-minded approach to what the world was. And I still think that's
Yeah.
around today, but there's a reason why, and we can bring it back to music here for a second in the same sense. There's a reason why so many people end up conforming to, I guess, what society holds, is because as soon as you try and, let's say you're with your friends, so to speak, and they say, let's go to the bars, let's go to the clubs. You're like, oh man, I don't really want to. Like, that's not really for me. Well, then you're at a risk of, so to speak, dying. You're at a risk of being isolated from the group, and being isolated to people, that in some ways, what do they do to you in the prisons? They isolate you. That can almost be a sentencing that's worse than death. It can literally
Yeah.
drive you crazy. So people will actively go out of their way, so to speak, to try and walk the same way as others in order to avoid isolation. And it's just offering spaces and music and art where people can feel less alone. That's why music is so powerful, is because it creates that feeling of, even if you are alone, you can get that feeling of, I'm not alone, because this person gets me, because I relate to their music and it speaks to me and I feel like they understand me and they know who I am. So it really is, we're in that position of like, how do we use music, art, creativity in order to help the people who are trying to just find more of themselves? How do we help them feel less alone? What do you think?
You know what, Aiden? Sometimes I think it's better to not think much at all, you know?
I mean, yeah.
Because what you said is just, I mean, to solidify that any further, I think would tamper with the magic in what you just said. Like, it's really that simple. Like, man, I got a lot of pain in my soul still, and it would be kind of wrong to not express it so that I can at least build a banner for those who are like me, for those who have had their entire being ground into a powder and then reformed into something new, right? And who are I'm in the process of doing that now in another way too, right? But there's a song that's been living in my heart for the past month that really embodies that song, and I know that it would be very very therapeutic for me and very stress relieving for me to perform that for people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And yeah, it's just a lot. It's a long journey. It's a long journey. But yeah, we're very lucky to be able to live in a place where we can have a dialogue like this, and it's encouraged, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where there is liberty, right? And yeah, I don't agree with everything that's happening in this country, but people are free to choose and they're expressing their freedom of choice,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are some of them being influenced into maybe making decisions that I see as very harmful? Absolutely. But that's that's between, that's not my burden. Thank goodness, right? Thank
To a
goodness, because
degree.
I've had my burden, right?
Yeah.
I still have my burden. So,
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's a degree of it not being your burden, but I do believe in,
mm,
if we have a, and I guess this is sort of diving a little more into the realm of spirituality at the moment, but that's fine.
absolutely.
If we have
Maybe we
sort
should
of,
just go where it's going, right?
yeah, totally. If we sort of perspectivize it, whatever you want to say, from the degree of like oneness and unity,
Mm,
all any suffering is all of our suffering. It's like if you were to imagine a world in which only the 1% was suffering and what the 99% of people would do to relieve that suffering. The ways in
absolutely.
which we would go out of our ways for one another and help one another. The problem is that at the moment the 99% is suffering. So you have 99% of people who are trying to fight one another in order to be the 1% of people who aren't suffering. Instead of you have 99% of people who aren't suffering, who are making sure that the 1% are living as abundant of a life as everyone else's.
No doubt. That was really powerful. That's a very godly thing that you just said. One person's pain is all our pain.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. That was good.
Thank you.
That's a high good. That's a high perspective.
I believe it. And I think that, you know, the more we can share in conversation about it and the more we can connect to one another and relate to one another in the process and in the journey of it, that's how we can create space for the healing to be done. Like something that I'm really excited about, just on a side note, in this journey of having these sorts of conversations is like, I really just hope to attract in like a diverse group of individuals. Like I love that you come
Mm-hmm.
from a Christian background. I want to speak with people of, you know, Muslim backgrounds and Jewish backgrounds and like being able to just, I just feel like we really are just chasing the same thing, but from different angles and from different understandings.
Yeah.
And where I benefit, I think, is that, when you first met me, something you said to me when you were like, "Are you a Christian?" I think you asked. And I was like, I have a hard time identifying myself with sort of one area. And you're like, you're a free spirit
Mm.
and you're just, what did you say to me? If you remember? You're like,
Oh,
you're a free
bro.
spirit and you have a hard time
I
trying
could,
to label yourself with any one sort of thing. I was
yeah.
like, yeah, something like that. What were you going to
Dude,
say?
I can tell you all about recovery too, man. I can't go back that far, bro.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I got some cobwebs going on up there, man. Oh yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
The path of recovery is a beautiful thing, man. It's,
it is. Yeah.
I think that's like the path to recovery is a path to like reconnecting with oneself. And I feel like everyone in this world almost needs to be in recovery. I think recovery is that reconnection with our divine nature and our divine truth. And it's just that
Absolutely.
is the people who, addiction or the exacerbation, the exaggeration of what addiction could become. It just like that is those are like the deepest rock bottoms you can hit, which is what really ends up being the catalyst for either change or die. I just think a lot of people get stuck in
Absolutely.
something that's not necessarily dangerous enough to their life that they can go through it for their entire life.
Ain't it funny? Ain't it funny how it works like that? Ain't it
Which,
funny how you can be better off being somebody who's ODing in the street sometimes? Not always, but it can end up being a silver lining in the sense that you either had to. I was reading a book,
mm-hmm,
I think it's Think and Grow Rich, where
mm-hmm,
men warriors were in battles where the odds were so stacked against them. And then the general's like, okay, take all our escape ships, ship them out in the middle of the sea, and burn them down. Now we have to either win or we die.
mm-hmm,
Right. And he put everyone on the same page of we're either winning this battle or we're dying. Right. And so all of those soldiers, every single one of them was so switched on that they won the battle because there was no other option. And so there's an interesting catalyst that comes from having only one way, right? Having only one direction that you, or only two very powerfully impactful directions you can go in, either sheer permanent failure
mm-hmm.
or stunning victory, right? And so, yeah, that's a funny thing I've always noticed.
Mm-hmm.
about life. And yeah, it is a shame when people are sort of lulled into a monotony, a
Yeah.
comfortable monotony that they don't see a problem with.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, you're right, life is fine. You're right, you could do this forever and you could sustain it easily. But don't you want more?
Is it about more, so to speak? I think that's a word that like can be convoluted in a sense where people,
Dangerous.
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Like,
Very
don't get,
American dreamy, hey?
yeah, a little bit.
Big old house
Uh,
and big swimming pool and
yeah. Well, I think the modern like sort of idea of more is generally speaking like, come on, don't you want more, man? Don't you want more money? Don't you want more riches, more fame, more being known, more attention? But it's like, is that really what more means?
it
Or is
definitely
that just
sounds
what
like
we?
that's what it means.
Yeah. Well, that's what
But
we've
that's not what I
attributed.
was referring to. I was
Right.
referring to a deeper experience out of life, a more vibrant experience out of life.
Uh, I like that. That's what I would attribute to more as well. It's like,
Yeah.
how do we? I mean, there's so much land mass, and there's so much earth, and we occupy so little of it, and yet there never seems to be enough. How does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That is the frailty of the human existence. That is separation from spirit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because, and it's set up in that way. It's set up so perfectly like that that we need to take a deeper look at what we're experiencing in life in order to get better and to have more and to be better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is you can be on the island, you can have everything that this world has to offer and not be satisfied. And if you're meeting people like that, or if you are somebody like that, it makes you wonder, like, why is the world like this? And so that's where God comes in for a lot of people because they have to find a way to fill that missing piece. And that's where addiction comes from, is just trying to fill that God-sized hole with things
Mm-hmm.
that can. And unfortunately, there is, I believe there's an evil on this world. And so that evil has been very aware of this for a long time, and he's manifested things in this world such as drugs, stimulants, right? That can temporarily relieve that burden,
Mm-hmm.
but it's temporary, right?
I mean, I'd play in a funny way devil's advocate to that, in that I don't necessarily think that evil has created drugs, but I do think that I had a good way to put it. Uh, if we go back to sort of like nothing is inherently evil, there has been a utilization of that in order for the escape mechanism that ends up coming with avoiding all the pain in the drugs. But if something is naturally created as well, I
Mm.
think you know what I'm trying to say here. I had a way of putting it, and then I kind of just lost it. But
Yeah, well, like cocaine is a coca leaf, right? And it
yeah,
has very benevolent purposes, I'm sure. I don't know what they are,
yeah.
but I've had like coca leaf tea before and it's delicious. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one, right?
And then yet
So,
another one, and then yet another one, and then yet another one.
yeah, and then I was broke. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just
Primo.
kidding, just kidding.
Primo. No,
Yeah,
I love it. That's good. It's good.
but yeah.
Yeah,
There's definitely something happening. Mm-hmm.
I think while nothing on earth is inherently evil in itself, I do think that there is a force that is evil.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the internal force,
Yep.
right? And it can get a hold of people
Oh yeah.
and it can get a hold of anyone at any time. And just like the good can too, right?
Mm-hmm. I forget where I
So,
heard it, but the saying of like, what does good have to do in order for evil to win?
yeah. I was thinking about this earlier, actually. That's funny.
Yeah. What's the answer?
That's funny. Be idle,
Yeah. Nothing.
stand idly by. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where you got to really, because I could say it clear as day, but I don't want to do that because that ruins the journey, right? You got to go on your own journey and discover that. But I've seen the patterns,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you'll notice that anytime somebody tries to rise above all of this and comes with presenting good ideas, they don't last very long, right? And so that's something that's very, until you have an awareness of the Most High, or an awareness of your own, whatever your highest good is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to make sense why this world gets away with doing stuff like that all the time. if
Yeah.
every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And I think that's why I believe in Jesus, because when I look at the world and I see a world that's so overrun with things going amiss and things going awry, and so much of our leadership is headed down the wrong path and doing the wrong things. If in science they say every action has an equal and opposite reaction, what evens that out? And Jesus is a very plausible answer for why the world is the way it is today, right? Because if Jesus is that he portrays that highest good.
Mm-hmm.
He portrays that perfect being. And it's kind of funny because are you a Star Wars fan?
Not really, but sort of. Not really. No.
The dark side have
Yeah.
so there's the light side and the dark side of the force. And the Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
there's many Jedi.
Yeah.
And then the dark side, there's two. There's only two Sith. And why that is because A, it's a metaphor for selfishness, right? Which is, that's a literal thing that leads to isolation, right? Leads to dark stuff. You were talking about earlier how isolation is a voice, but also it's so that all the dark side can be manifest in those two individuals, or the majority of the spiritual metaphysical power can be manifest in those two Sith instead of sharing it amongst hundreds of Jedi like they
Mm.
do, right? And so, it's kind of funny how Jesus and God would be like a contrast or a polar opposite to that. But that doesn't fully add up because then you got to account for the angels, the saints, right? There's a
Yeah.
whole army for the good too,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
But I like
I'm
that
kind of
idea of sort of the spiritual manifestation of like strength in the darkness and how it just tries to, it presents itself as the good side, so to speak, because that's, join us in the dark side. We have cookies. That sort of that idea of like there is light in the darkness, but at the same time it is, there's a selfish desire for power underneath all of it. That is, that's like join us because I get to feel more powerful as the darkness rather than giving my power to something greater than me, but in that actually receiving a greater strength of power because I'm not any longer trying to do it all by myself. I actually have something greater than me that's leading me. So maybe just to bring it back to music for a little bit here,
Absolutely.
that idea of something greater than us leading us. How can we relate that to your journey in music and in art?
That's a good question. I don't feel comfortable answering it because I've been just so focused on growing my faith and I haven't put in that work.
No?
I'd be lying to you if I said I've been working hard on my music lately. I haven't.
It doesn't need to necessarily be. You don't necessarily have to be in the active process of making music right now, but like just what does it mean to you in that pursuit of something greater? And like, you mentioned like the God-sized hole that people are trying to fill. And sometimes I think a word like God just tends to upset a lot of people.
Yeah.
So just in that, like, I'm trying to find a way to like practicalize this concept and sort of say, okay, well, what are we doing in music together here to fill that God-sized hole, which can be taken in so many different directions, but we're going to make sure that we stay in the nicely oriented one. Yeah.
Yeah. Somewhat orderly. Because
Yeah.
the expanse is so vast.
Yeah.
And that sometimes is its problem, right? You look at a YouTube search bar and you go to a YouTube search bar and you have no idea what you want to watch. So it's, even though every single possibility is a possibility, that also gives you no possibilities because you have no idea where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just a search bar
Yeah.
and suggestions on your homepage.
Yeah.
So
Just for you right now, what is that higher Colin saying? Out of curiosity. What's next for Mitch?
I can't tell you that.
No.
I'm not ready to tell people that.
Okay. I respect
I don't
that.
even fully know.
Yeah, I respect that.
It's been it's been a bit of a mess lately where I'm looking down all these different paths and there are many different paths I could go down and I'm fine with any of them. And that's the problem because I know that I'm being called to make a decision that I'm really not comfortable making because I want that guidance. I want to cop out and throw it on God and be like, will you just tell me what you want me to do, please? But I'm going through a trial right now where he's like, and this is why The term the father is so perfect because it's like, yeah, dad could help, right? Dad could solve all the problems right now, but this isn't about dad. This is about dad watching you, right? Solve the problem. Because he
Mm-hmm.
knows that I know what to do. Am I willing to move past myself far enough to do what's right instead of do what I want?
Mm-hmm.
Even if what I want seems like the right thing. That's why the trial is so intense because I can't use my moral compass to find my way out of this one because both paths seem morally right. So, but that's all deep theological stuff right there. I can't really. That's why I'm having a hard time answering that question because I would have to
Yeah.
answer it from a very theological standpoint, right?
No, I mean it's I think it's a dilemma that I can applaud the fact that you're in it in the first place because I think that it's life tends to sort of be that series of trials, and it ends up we either pass the trial and we pass the test and we rise to a higher octave, or we fail the test and we end up having to go through it again until eventually we can spot the pattern and rise above it. It's like, you know, there's these layers. There's so many layers to this creation that it's funny how, I mean, this is a whole other conversation, but we do in a sense live in a giant mathematical equation
Yeah.
where it's just literally like, if I can pass this test, then I can rise to a higher level of numbers to get more another test. Yeah. Now
Yeah.
I'm overwhelming myself with logic and math and numbers, but it's so interesting how numbers and energy and math and all these things, the scientific perfection of the universe that we exist in, and how we are just trying to rise up to the same level as what it already is. That's it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Me and a couple of guys that I study with, he always talks about how many symbols there are in life and
Mm-hmm.
how there's so much symbolic language being portrayed to you, such as the sun causing you to cast a shadow on the ground, which is the light revealing the darkness within you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just fun ways to make your existence more vibrant as you go about your day to day, just looking for these little signs and symbols,
Mm-hmm.
and mine are oftentimes quite morbid, so I won't share too many of mine, but you know,
Yeah, like looking out for little things. Even today, I was just walking past a bus stop, and I don't really understand the logic behind it, but they taped like comic strips of Bible verses onto the back of the glass of the bus there, and I was like,
oh,
but like you couldn't look underneath the pages, so I was like, is somebody supposed to like rip this off and take it? Or are you wanting people to read all of them? But it was like taped, but it was taped in a way that I couldn't lift up the pages and read it all. So I was like, what are you trying to do here? I wanted to read it, but I didn't understand if I was supposed to just take it. I don't know.
right.
But I like looking out for those little things. Life's always offering us insights and guidance, and sometimes the answers take time to come. So, man, I'm here to support and help out as you're going through this aspect of your journey as well. I think, you know, more than anything, it's about how we help each other out as people.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes we just got to solve these problems for ourselves. And, I'm excited to see how, as you rise through these challenges, what it does for your music, what it does for your creation.
Thank you.
And yeah, how the evolution of Mitch continues to take place.
Likewise,
Yeah,
Raphael.
man. Raphael. All right, dude. Thank you so much for a riveting conversation. That went by super fast. It was a good hour.
It was a strong hour. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. It sets the tone for I'm sure what will be many more. And there'll be another one of these. We're gonna keep it going.
I hope this question that you brought tonight is answered by the time that we come back for our next discussion, because I would like to give something a little more solid, right? I would like to give something a little more
Yeah.
concrete.
Yeah, no,
Because
I
it was a
mean,
great question, right? I think I need to create the artwork for that question to be answered.
yeah.
I have an idea, but I can't, like you said, sometimes talking about things takes away the power of it, right? So I don't want to start presenting a bunch of
Don't do it.
it's time to throw on the Nike check and just do it.
Yeah.
So
We'll revisit it in 3 months or something.
quarterly.
something like that. And we'll have a chance to reflect on this conversation and what's changed since then. And it's all part of the journey, part of the process that we get to be in together. And I think that's it's a beautiful thing that we get to capture.
Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna fly away now.
And I want the bird to be here.
Turn into a bird.
And on that note,
see
you later.
This isn't even my final form. Fly, you fools. Okay. All right, Aiden.
Thanks. Yeah.
It was tons of fun. Thank you for today. I can't wait to come back out to class too.
Yep.
That's gonna be great.
It's called class now?
I look at it as a class. I love it.
Cool. That's nice. I see it as a good thing.
It's classy.
Yeah.
It's a classy time.
Bunch of classy folk.
It's good. It's really good, man. It's super healthy.
Yeah.
I miss it a lot. I've been humbled lately. I try to do things on my own. I need people. I need to realize that.
Quick pitch for Studio Raphael Songwriter Circles. Come on out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely. If you need community around your craft, please come down and join us in our creative endeavors, or join Aiden and the gang. I'm currently AWOL, which is why we're having this conversation today, because I've been distant from the group, but I will be around.
And just because you're a member of the community, and we're supporting the community. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, my boy.
Cheers, brother. We'll keep in touch.
Fare thee well.
Adios, muchacho.